Brahmachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Jamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai. Sri Sri Gauranitai ki jai. Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Sri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Govardhana Dari ki jai. Govardhandam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 11, text 22 and 23. Raghunatha Vaidya Upayaya Mahashaya. Raghunatha Vaidya Upadhyaya Mahashaya. Janhara Darshani Krishna Prema Bhakti Hoya. Janhara Darshani Krishna Prema Bhakti Hoya. Raghunatha Vaidya Upadhyaya Mahashaya. Janhara Darshani Krishna Prema Bhakti Hoya.
Raghunatha Vaidya Upadhyaya Mahashaya. Janhara Darshani Krishna Prema Bhakti
Vaishnavis.
Raghunatha Vaidya Upadhyaya Mahashaya. Janhara Darshani Krishna Prema Bhakti Hoya. Raghunatha Vaidya Upadhyaya Mahashaya.
Raghunatha Vaidya, the physician Raghunath, Upadhyaya, Mahashaya, a great personality with the title Upadhyaya, Janhara, whose, Darshane, by visiting, Krishna Prema, love of Krishna, Bhakti, devotional service, Hoya, awakened. Translation. The physician Raghunath, also known as Upadhyaya, was so great a devotee that simply seeing him would awaken one's dormant love of Godhead. Please repeat. The physician Raghunath, also known as Upadhyaya, was so great a devotee that simply seeing him would awaken one's dormant love of Godhead. There's no purport, so we'll read text number 23. Translation. Sundarananda, another branch of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, was Lord Nityananda's most intimate servant. Lord Nityananda Prabhu perceived the life of Brajabhumi in his company. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. In the Caitanya Bhagavat, Adi-lila, chapter 6, it is stated that Sundarananda was an ocean of love of Godhead, and the chief associate of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. In the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, he is stated to have been Sudama in Krishna-lila. Thus he was one of the 12 cowherd boys who came down with Balaram when he descended as Sri Nityananda Prabhu. The holy place where Sundarananda lived is situated in the village known as Maheshapura, which is about 14 miles east of the Majadiya railway station of the Eastern Railway from Calcutta to Burdwan. This place is within the district of Jeshore, which is now in Bangladesh. Among the relics of this village, only the old residential house of Sundarananda still exists. At the end of the village resides a Bol, pseudo Vaishnava, and all the buildings, both the temples and the house, appear to be newly constructed. In Maheshapura there are deities of Sri Radhavallabha and Sri Sri Radharaman. Near the temple is a small river of the name Vetravati. Sundarananda Prabhu was a Naishtika brahmachari. He never married in his life. Therefore, he had no direct descendants except his disciples. But the descendants of his family still reside in the village known as Mangala Didhi in the district of Burdhum. In that same village is a temple of Balaram, and the deity there is regularly worshipped. The original deity of Maheshapura, Radhavallabha, was taken by the Saidabhad Goswamis of Burhampur. And since the present deities were installed, a Zamindar family of Maheshapura has looked after their worship. On the full moon day of the month of Magh, January-February, the anniversary of Sundarananda's disappearance is regularly celebrated, and people from the neighbourhood areas gather together to observe this festival. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmanitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Gurum Yat Kripa Tamahan Vande Sri Gurum Dinitarnam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. By the grace of the spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls, even a lame man can cross over mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. So we'll say a little about Raghunath Upadhyaya. And interestingly, we actually spoke about him some months back. I'm not sure if his name came up in earlier verses of Caitanya Caritamrita, but however it happened, we did a little bit of research back then. So we still have our original notes here, and as is mentioned here by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, wonderful associate of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and he met Caitanya Mahaprabhu. They had a wonderful meeting in northern India, perhaps in Vrindavan or Prayag, when the Lord was touring the north. And Raghupati Upadhyaya was a Brahmin. He was a great scholar and a perfect gentleman. And when he met Caitanya Mahaprabhu, they had a very delightful conversation, questions and answers. And the first question that Mahaprabhu asked Raghupati Upadhyaya, what is the most charming form of Sri Krishna? To which he replied, Shamasunda, blackish Krishna in threefold bending form. And what is the most charming mellow? And the mellow of conjugal love was Raghupati Upadhyaya's answer. And what is the most charming abode? The abode of Mathura. And what is the most charming age of the Lord? And to that Raghupati replied, adolescence. So Mahaprabhu was very happy with those answers, and he embraced Raghupati Upadhyaya, who went into transcendental bliss. And at that point, Raghupati Upadhyaya realized that Mahaprabhu was not an ordinary human being. He was the Supreme Lord himself. And Raghupati wrote many beautiful verses glorifying Krishna because he was a great poet and scholar. He was a Mithila Brahmin. Mithila is a very holy place, a great seat of learning still in India. And one of those verses is very famous in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, along with others. And Rupa Goswami was also present at this particular meeting between the Lord and Raghupati. And he liked some of the verses so much that he included them in his book of poetry, Padyavali. Padyavali means an anthology of poetry. And one of those verses, Raghupati wrote that there are many persons in this world who are afraid of death. And for that reason they study different Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. But as far as I'm concerned, they actually worship those books, not just study them, but they actually worship the Upanishads, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, and so on. As far as I'm concerned, Raghupati said, I worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, is crawling as the most charming, delightful infant. So this verse is found there. It's a very wonderful verse, and actually Krishna Kirtan Prabhu reminded me of this verse some months back. He has it on his phone with a delightful illustration there of this pastime of Krishna in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. So that jogged my memory. So wonderful, wonderful personality, Raghupati Upadhyaya. And there's some other important point here which we don't want to omit. We can find it. I just can't recall, but that's okay. So we'll move on now to saying a little bit about Sundarananda Thakur, who, as Prabhupada mentions here, expanded himself to come with Gauranga Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda from Goloka Vrindavan. He is Sudam in Krishna Lila. So not a lot that I could find about him, but it said that he had all mystic powers. And on one occasion he made kadamba flowers bloom on a lime tree. And then he offered those kadamba flowers in the service of his deity, Radha Raman. On another occasion he dove into a river and pulled a crocodile out. So, and it said that he represented Lord Nityananda Prabhu in being a saviour of the most fallen. And he disappeared on the very auspicious full moon day of Kartik. So another wonderful personality who we read about in the Caitanya Caritamrita and also Caitanya Bhagavat. So Prabhupada told the story one time, true story, of a former Prime Minister of England who had a very important appointment one day with an ambassador from a foreign country. And the ambassador was on time and he was ushered into the waiting room adjacent the Prime Minister's office, and the secretary said, I'm sure the Prime Minister won't be very long, please wait here. So the ambassador was waiting and waiting and waiting, and quite some time elapsed, 15 minutes, half an hour. So the ambassador became a little impatient and he was thinking to himself, well, yes, the Prime Minister's an important man, but I'm also an important man. Why is he keeping me waiting? So eventually he looked through the keyhole, and in the Prime Minister's office he could see that the Prime Minister was down on all fours, and he had his young grandson sitting on his back, and both of them were giggling and laughing and having a wonderful time. Grandfather was taking grandson around like a horse, and grandson was enjoying like anything. Very intimate pastime. So Prabhupada uses this example that this is the special secret, quite often not fully understood by other Vaishnava sampradayas, the secret of Mahaprabhu's teachings. Very confidential, most intimate pastimes of the Supreme Lord in his feature as Shyamasundar Govinda Gopal, along with his associates. So not much awe and veneration in one sense, though we have to always be very respectful and very cautious in the devotional path. Prabhupada said one time, the problem with you Westerners is that you're not sufficiently fearful of Maya, the Lord's illusory energy. His Divine Grace used the same translation as his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, that which is not, to describe Maya, or the Lord's illusory energy. Maya can also be translated as magic, illusion. So we have to be very cautious. But that said, Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they've broken open the storehouse of love of Godhead, and they're freely distributing the contents, not caring who was qualified, who was not qualified, as is described here. Sundarananda was like Nityananda Prabhu in that he was very merciful to the most fallen personalities. So, of course, in Vaishnavism we do have other worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his more regal, majestic aspect, Narayan, Vishnu, great Lord of Vaikuntha. And we read in Brihad Bhagavad Amrita how when Gopakumara went to Vaikuntha, his Brihad Bhagavad Amrita is, of course, in two parts, and both parts are a quest. The first is Narada Muni travelling all over the material universe and beyond to the spiritual world, looking for that devotee who has the most of Krishna's mercy. And the second part is a very innocent boy from Govardhan who met a great devotee and was initiated into the chanting of the Gopal mantra. And he also went on a quest to find that Lord Gopal, whose name he was chanting. And he went to many, but he didn't know very much. He went to many different places and met many different personalities, and he even was able to go to Vaikuntha and have direct darshan with Lord Narayan. And he even played Gopal Kumar also played the flute, so he played the flute for Lord Narayan in the great court of Vaikuntha, and he was thinking, perhaps this is my Gopal, and Lord Narayan was also recognizing him as his great devotee, but there it was a different mood, and Gopal Kumara was dressed in his simple cow-herding attire that he'd travelled there with from Govardhan. And some of the Vaikuntha Vasis became a little disturbed, and he was very familiar with Lord Narayan, which that familiarity is not normally observed in Vaikuntha. There's a tremendous amount of awe and veneration and worship. from a distance. But Gopakumara was, he had to be instructed by the Vaikuntha-vasis. Look, when you stand before Lord Narayan, don't shuffle around. Don't be too intimate. And if you like, we can give you some more regal attire. We can even give you forearms. In that way, you'll be appropriately presenting yourself before the Supreme Lord. But Gopakumara wasn't very much interested. He was still hankering for that Lord Gopal, whose name he'd been chanting and who he was searching for. So these different moods are there, and it's of course the mercy of Srila Prabhupada that he brought these very sublime teachings to the Western world, and for several years now at least, we've been relishing, at least on weekends, reading this great literature, Caitanya Caritamrita, and other wonderful books that Srila Prabhupada very kindly has presented to us. So we, of course, have to develop a taste, critical. In order to relish something, one man's food is another man's poison, but we somehow or other have a great opportunity to develop the param drisva nivartante, the higher taste of devotional life. Devotional life is certainly not for persons of faint hearts or weak minds. It's for very courageous persons who are done with, at least to some degree, have developed a distaste for the very insignificant pleasures of this realm and have developed a little taste for chanting Krishna's names. As Rupa Goswami famously said, he wished he had many thousands, millions of ears, and similarly many thousands and millions of tongues to relish the chanting of Krishna's names, because they're unlimitedly blissful. And Krishna is very merciful. Taisham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So we may have not been engaging in Krishna's loving devotional service for countless lifetimes, but then we get an opportunity, which is very supreme good fortune. And but we may find that yes, spiritual life is hard work. Anything wonderful and difficult to obtain normally requires a tremendous amount of effort. Just like relationships, we all know that sometimes it happens that persons are in a relationship as lovers or friends, or the parental-child relationship primarily. But after some time there's separation. But then the person who induced the separation realizes after a period of time apart that actually my partner or my friend, my child, actually they're a wonderful person, and I really should get back together with them, make an effort. So then we approach our former lover, we'll use that example, and we say, look, I'm really sorry, I had a brain explosion, I don't know what came over me, let's get back together again. But then the person who has been rejected says, well, you broke my heart, when you went away, and I'm just not so sure I want to get back together. I really need some big signs from you that you're really serious and sincere this time, because you really put me through a lot when we separated. So we can use that example in regard to our relationship with the Supreme Lord. That we rejected him, we came to this Fool's Paradise, material world. He's gone to a lot of trouble to set it up for our enjoyment. And we've been giving it our best shot for who knows how many lifetimes. It's said somewhere in the Vedic literature that material world has been created for a number of reasons. Yes, to facilitate the jivas wanting to enjoy separately from Krishna, and for them to also gain some reputation whilst here, and also for self-realization. So those opportunities are here for everyone. And we see the most honoured personalities in history, in many instances, are the great spiritual teachers, the great acharyas. For example, I can remember in the year 2017, we had a number of visitors here at New Govardhana over one particular weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and they were all followers of Sripad Ramanujacharya, because it was the 1000th anniversary of his appearance. He appeared in the year 1017. So we can just see 1000 years on, still great Vaishnavacharyas are being honoured and revered. Now, they were very nice devotees. Many took the trouble of dressing up in their traditional South Indian, the ladies in beautiful, elegant saris, and the men in dhotis and wrappers. Some even put on their big Ramanuja tilak. That was very nice. So 1,000 years, and similarly, last time we spoke, we mentioned the good fortune of being in Sridham Mayapur for the 500th anniversary of Mahaprabhu's advent, and that was a wonderful time also. Krishna Kirtan, I think you were there that time, and you also went around and did the Navadvip Mandal Parikrama, so it was a wonderful occasion. So those personalities, the great acharyas, the most glorified, their fame, their name, their reputation lasts on and on and on, most glorified. One of Krishna's names is Virabhadra. Actually, Nityananda Prabhu's son, his name was Virabhadra. He's a great personality, incarnation of Siradakshai Vishnu, and after the disappearance of Nityananda Prabhu and Janavamata and Mahaprabhu, so many other great Vaishnavacharyas, it was Virabhadra Prabhu became one of the very big and powerful branches of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, initiated tens and thousands of disciples. And Vira, interestingly, the English word virile comes from Vira in the Sanskrit, which means heroic. So Krishna is the greatest hero, and his devotees are also great spiritual heroes for spreading Krishna's glories far and wide. So, and of course Srila Prabhupada has left so many wonderful instructions. Quote of the day from Srila Prabhupada to Jamuna Devi: if you don't teach others what I have taught you, you'll become envious. And Jamuna's own realization in the exciting but sometimes challenging early pioneering days of the Krishna consciousness movement, when there was challenges. Krishna, what are you trying to teach me here? So devotees, we all go through different times in our lives. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, and other times it's it's a rocky ride. It's very challenging, very turbulent. I remember quite a few years ago now, maybe even more than 10 years ago, there was a fishing trawler, commercial fishing trawler, went down a couple of miles off Cape Byron at night. I think the boat hit something and took on water, and within a very short time the trawler went down. And there were 3 fishermen on board, and it was night time. And one of the fishermen, he started swimming. He was a strong swimmer. He started swimming towards the Cape Byron lighthouse, which we're all familiar with. And he managed, even though swimming for quite a few hours during the night, he swam in the direction of the lighthouse, and he managed to haul himself up on the beach and raise the alarm. And another one of the fishermen was rescued the next morning, but sadly one of the fishermen perished. But of course, and he said, the only way I managed to reach shore, because it was pitch black, was I just kept swimming in the direction of the lighthouse. So, of course, for us, that lighthouse is Hari, Guru and Vaishnavas, especially the wonderful instructions left, vast amount of instructions left by Srila Prabhupada in his books, and many devotees now, by the wonders of modern technology, going hither and thither with Prabhupada's lectures playing, which is very wonderful to hear. So that here's our beacon of light to stay, even we have to swim through the turbulent waters of Kali. In the Goswami's writings, there is a reference to Kali as the great sea monster Kali. Because any of us who are familiar with the ocean, there are many sea monsters there that will come up from the depths and devour us, given half a chance. We have a whole group of nice people outside from Krishna village. Oh, they're moving now towards, maybe somebody outside could just, one of our devotees could, got that, fantastic. There's about 8, looks like ladies, and they're all probably here for the first time, so they're heading over in the direction now. One of our devotees is taking care. That's nice. So, all right, we heard a nice analogy the other day to inspire us, hopefully, in our chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which of course all initiated devotees vow to do 16 rounds for the rest of our lives. And that's the biggest investment of time, we could say, apart from whatever service we're able to do. But for those of us who are slow chanters, it's a 2.5 hour a day investment. Some may be more fast in their chanting. But I heard this example recently. Just like we may understand I'm unfit, I need to get fit, physically fitter. So we take out a gym membership and we go to the gym. And but whilst we're at the gym, we don't actually lift the weights up. We just hold them in our hands. Or we don't actually fire up the treadmill so that we can run on it or walk at a quick pace. We just stand on it. So we're not actually going to get the benefit of our gym membership. We have to actually lift those weights and walk or run. So similarly, this investment of time, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, even 3 hours, every day chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We really do have to focus on that time. And of course, I'm sure many of us have heard many lectures where devotees have done brilliant imitations of Jibba Japa and Dai Bom Japa. We won't torture you with but we all know. But it's such it's actually the most confidential time of the day for all of us, where we chant Krishna and Srimati Radharani's names, Hara, Hari. O my Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your loving devotional service, which is the translation Srila Prabhupada gave of the Maha Mantra. So if we do that with some degree of intensity, the hard work is, of course, to control the mind. There are so many other things going on in our lives, and the mind being material is easily distracted. Chanchalam hi manaha Krishna, Arjuna says to Krishna, but the mind is unsteady. Oh, actually Krishna says to Arjuna, the mind's unsteady, turbulent, obstinate, very strong. To control it's very difficult, just like to control the wind. But it can be done by constant practice and detachment. So that's our, of course, daily challenge, to maximize that time, to get the most benefit. Tapas doesn't just mean pain. Tap can mean like the sun's heat. It can mean focused attention. As the yogis, they focus on the goal of their meditation. So we're encouraged to do that. We got a few minutes here, and of course, Srila Prabhupada in his preaching all over the world, but in India sometimes Prabhupada would meet persons who were upset with him, often from the Brahmin, Smarta Brahmin caste, who understood that Prabhupada was initiating foreigners, making them Brahmins, and some of them were displeased with Prabhupada for doing that, and sometimes there would be confrontations and arguments, even voices raised. On one occasion, a Brahmin in India complained to Prabhupada, "How can you be doing this? These people are so sinful." To which Prabhupada responded, asked him a question, "What is more powerful, sin or Krishna's name?" And this Brahmin was just speechless. And Prabhupada pushed him. So the man had, because he was a knowledgeable person, he had to admit, yes, Krishna's name is inconceivably more powerful than even mountains of sin. So if one chants Krishna's name, then even so much past impious activity can just be burned up. It's like the sun can burn up even contaminated substances. A pool of urine is evaporated, but the sun doesn't become contaminated. So, and delightful pastime of Srila Prabhupada's in Bombay, when the mail finally caught up with Srila Prabhupada, and in the letters, in amongst the mail, there was one letter from the US Department of Immigration, and it contained Prabhupada's green card. I think we all know that, which is still very difficult to get these days, a green card which enables the recipient to reside permanently in the US and even to work in the US. Permanent residency, of course, have the same thing here in Australia, something similar. So when that arrived in the mail, Tamal Krishna Goswami opened the letter and informed Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so grateful. Giriraj Maharaj was also there, and recalls how Prabhupada was very quiet for some minutes, and then eventually he spoke, and he said how grateful he was to the US government that they allowed him to come into the US in the first instance, and then granting him this permanent residence to come in and to go out, and not putting too many demands on him, because he said as a result of that, his coming to America, he was able to fulfill the personal instructions he received from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And it was only in America that Prabhupada was able to attract some young people, disciples, who became very dedicated to him, the original pioneers. And also, as a result of that, Prabhupada was able to get some money to print books. And we all know some of the first printings of Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada acknowledges the very wonderful contribution of Jayananda Prabhu's life savings, which is either $5,000 or $6,000 US, a princely sum in those days. But being so grateful, Jayananda gave Prabhupada that amount, and Prabhupada was able to do the first printing of Nectar of Devotion. Also, Teachings of Lord Caitanya, I think another disciple gave Prabhupada substantial contribution for that. And Sriman George Harrison Prabhu gave Prabhupada $19,000 US. And that was, with that amount, Prabhupada was able to print the Krishna books. So Prabhupada was very grateful to the US for the facility that the US gave. There's an interesting story. Another Gaudiya Vaishnava said to Prabhupada once in India in the early 70s, he said, "Your godbrothers went to Europe and failed." And Prabhupada immediately jumped in, "Yes, so I thought, let me go to America and also fail." But of course Prabhupada didn't fail. And even his godbrothers who went before him in the 1930s, for several years, they tried their best. There were three. And when Bon Maharaj, one of the three who went, passed away before Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada said he went straight back to Godhead. Even though it wouldn't appear that he was very successful in his preaching in the foreign lands, Prabhupada said because he tried. Because he tried. So, and interestingly, they had some friendship. And when Bon Maharaj heard that Prabhupada was going to America, he tried to help him. Prabhupada went to a festival at Bon Maharaj's ashram one time, and Bon Maharaj showed, or attempted to show Srila Prabhupada how to eat with a knife and fork, which Prabhupada had never done before. And Prabhupada wasn't very much interested, and Bon Maharaj also suggested that he probably have to dress in shirt and pants, as is sometimes the expression in India, rather than Prabhupada never changed out of his sannyasi attire, sannyas dhoti and kurta. But nonetheless, he was trying to help. But Prabhupada said, I wasn't going to the Western world to learn Western civilization. I was going to introduce them to India's rich spiritual culture. And I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who was invited by the British, who were trying to somehow or other win Gandhi over because he was such an agitator for independence. And when he did go to London, the British asked him, "So Gandhiji, what do you think of European civilization?" To which Gandhi responded, "That'd be a good idea." Because he didn't consider European or Western civilization to be very civilized. In fact, very barbaric. Of course, every group thinks other groups are barbaric and uncivilized. But still, anyway, we have adopted, to the best of our abilities, Vedic civilization and Vaishnava culture. So I better stop here, everyone. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? And I don't know if we have a microphone, but I can try. B-bag on. It's gone. Anyone have a question or a comment? Krishna. Yes.
What happened to the cowherd boy? Bring it in the line. What happened after that?
Gopakumara, he ends up in Goloka. Yes. And he meets his Lord Gopal. So it's a wonderful ending, happy ending, yes. But he's not satisfied in Vaikuntha. There's too much awe and veneration, yes. So he keeps on with his quest. But eventually he meets the Lord of his heart, his cherished Lord Gopal, in Goloka Vrindavan. You can read, it's a wonderful, if you ever get a chance. I think it's sold in our bookshop if you're a little fascinated. Brihat Bhagavatamrita, yes. a lost Shastra which was retrieved by Srila Sanatana Goswami. He wrote it down and then wrote a wonderful commentary on it. And there is a quote from Srila Prabhupada in a purport earlier in this Caitanya Charitamrita where Prabhupada mentions, if one wants to know all about Krishna's devotional service and Krishna's devotees, one must read Brihad Bhagavat Amrita. He doesn't use can, should, could, maybe, a very emphatic word, must read. So many of us have taken that instruction to heart and we have our copies. Yeah, wonderful. Anything else? Do you want to get the microphone to Vasishrestha?
Just a question on that. Did you say that it was a lost Shastra that Sanatana discovered and wrote up?
He retrieved it in his meditation.
He didn't make it up, no.
He retrieved it in his meditation. Yes,
Oh,
and then he wrote it down.
He retrieved it in his meditation.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's one of the Astasakis from whom all sciences originate, such as writing, poetry, dance, drama, singing, and so on. So he's eminently qualified to do that. Yes. Anything else? Krishna Kirtan, please elaborate.
I've just read the other in the Tappasandhara, Srila Goswami said there's many shastras that are floating, not revealed in the spiritual ether, especially in Kali Yuga. But then he made a point, said when this particular shastra is required, it's revealed in the heart of the Vedic stages. So this, hence, this Prabhupada is very important because it's revealed into the direct flow of the Caitanya. So that means it's for us. So very, and Yogi Prabhupada says that Sanatana Goswami said, I did not write this, it was revealed to me, the revelation that he wrote, like said, he wrote commentaries. So very, very important scripture.
Yeah, thank you for that, Krishna Kirtan, yes. As Srila Prabhupada also said, I didn't write these books, a revelation. Krishna was used as a wonderful instrument. Of course, he did write them, but direct dictation from the Supreme Lord. Anything else? Okay. Jai Ho. Sri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Gaura.